Large-scale protests continue in Minneapolis as a court hearing is scheduled for today after a Trump-appointed judge ordered DHS to preserve all evidence in the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy, following a lawsuit filed by the state. DHS says the 37-year-old ICU nurse was armed when a Border Patrol agent shot and killed him. We want to warn you, this footage may be hard to watch.
The people, the is wrong with you? Honestly.
Todd Blanche. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche joining us now. And Todd, we stopped the tape before shots rang out, but I want to get quickly your reaction to this hearing coming up today, this judge issuing a TRO on altering or destroying evidence.
Look, we'll be in court today. There's an ongoing investigation, as we've said, all weekend, and obviously we're not destroying evidence. And so, to the extent that the state of Minnesota wants to make this a show and go in front of a judge to insist that we do something we're absolutely not ever going to do, we'll be there. But this was a tragic situation that happened, and the fact that now we're going to go to court to say exactly what we're doing, which is, of course, we're investigating. We always investigate any conduct like this, any shooting like this, and we'll get to the bottom of everything that happened. But it is extraordinarily important that we do not jump to conclusions about anything that happened on Saturday morning. And remember what we saw on Saturday morning, what we all saw in that 10-15-second video is not the whole story. And every American should know that. The story goes way beyond that. It starts with the fact that literally for months, we have received zero assistance from the state of Minnesota and any assistance from law enforcement. And it leads to what you saw on Saturday morning, which is out of control rioters and a tragic situation unfolding.
I want to get to what we saw and how the DOJ characterizes what is available to us. But I do want to play for you. Minnesota's Attorney General Keith Ellison is basically saying that you guys are not preserving the crime scene. Listen here. Here's what he said.
I don't care if you're conservative, liberal, or whatever, but you should at least be in favor of conserving evidence in a homicide. And to have to go get an order from a judge to preserve that evidence is extraordinary and should alarm everyone who believes in equal justice under the law and who believes that every person, no matter how this case ultimately is resolved, deserves to have their case investigated to get to the truth of what happened.
Your reaction, Todd?
First of all, that was a bald-faced lie, and it's disgusting that the Attorney General at a time like this will come out with that disgusting rhetoric. As everybody knows, as the governor himself knows, as the Attorney General knows, as the mayor knows, after the incident happened, local law enforcement decided to come on the scene, and they lost the crime scene. Protesters and rioters overtook that crime scene. It was not federal law enforcement. It was not Border Patrol agents that did not preserve the crime scene. That is just blatantly false. And so it would do everybody in this country a lot better if honesty were spoken from the leadership in Minnesota. But we're going to continue to do what we do every day, which is the right thing, and investigate, and we'll go from there.
Todd, I want to dial into the frustrations at DHS. My colleague Bill Malusian reporting about the DHS's rhetoric. Here's a quote from his reporting saying there is extreme internal frustration with DHS officials going on television and putting out statements to describe Alex Preddy as a domestic terrorist who was there to inflict maximum damage on federal agents or conduct a massacre, even after multiple videos emerged to show that these claims appeared to be inaccurate. Some of these sources have described DHS's response to the shooting as a case study on how not to do crisis PR. One said they're so fed up they wish they could retire. Another says DHS is is making the situation worse. And even another adding, DHS is wrong, and we are losing this war. We are losing the base and the narrative. This is coming to a head, Todd. I ask you, based on the DOJ's purview, do the actions of Alex Preddy amount to domestic terrorism?
Look, it's an investigation, so I'm not going to prejudge what his actions were or were not. But there's two things that have to be part of this narrative. There are two very important points that have to be part of the story that we're talking about. Number one is the reason why that happened on Saturday is because we get zero cooperation from police. DHS, Border Patrol, operates in 50 states, doing hundreds of isolated, targeted arrests every day. There is one city where we see this outrage, one city, and that's Minneapolis.
Right,
and so
but Todd, with all due respect, sir, my question is more pointed. Do you believe your colleagues may have gone farther? You are an attorney at DOJ. 18 U.S. Code 2331 has a legal definition of domestic terrorism, and it doesn't appear to most of the country that have watched the available video, and we'll see if there's body cam video. I'd love to know if that's going to come out, if there was such a thing, but it does not appear to have met that definition of domestic terrorism. So I'm just sort of wondering how you in the DOJ are viewing whether your colleagues may have gone too far.
Look, I don't think anybody thinks that they were comparing what happened on Saturday to the legal definition of domestic terrorism. What we saw was a very violent altercation, and I am not going to prejudge the facts. You're right. There's a bunch of video that's out there. There's a bunch of video that we haven't seen yet in the minutes leading up to what happened and in what happened afterwards. And you're right, to the extent there's body cam or other videos that witnesses are still providing to us. So I'm not describing it as anything except for a tragedy, but I do not think it is fair. It is not fair for the narrative to be around something DHS said. It is not fair for the narrative to be around what a video shows over 10 seconds, when the real true story here is something much bigger and much more problematic that the American people have to recognize, which is that in one city we have this outrage and this powder keg happening, and it's not right, and it doesn't happen anywhere else, and it's simply because of one reason, and that's leadership in that state. When there was all the focus on the billions and billions of dollars in fraud happening in Minneapolis, suddenly Minneapolis becomes a powder keg. And the people that caused that to happen were the governor, the mayor, the attorney general, Omar. They're the ones that incited rhetoric, encouraged these rioters to go with their cell phones, not to peacefully protest, but to go out and do exactly what was happening on Saturday morning. And so there was a powder keg, and it was absolutely lit by that leadership.
Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, we appreciate your time. We look forward to following these details in that court hearing today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.